Welcome back to the Visible Founder Podcast. This is the show for founders who know they're building something real, but feel like visibility, credibility, and investor traction isn't keeping pace with the quality of their business. Today, we're diving into a problem we see constantly in consumer and CPG: incredible products, strong founders, and still stalled momentum between seed and Series A. Our guest today is Tom Malengo, co-founder of Brandjectory, a platform built to give emerging CPG founders the education, exposure, and engagement they actually need to grow and fund their businesses. Brandjectory works with founders from pre-revenue through Series A, helping them meet investors, practice real pitches, learn from CPG veterans, and build the kind of network that changes outcomes, not just optics. Today, we're going to talk about what investors really listen in for in CPG pitches, and why most founders start fundraising too late or too early, and how visibility and preparation and proximity compound faster than tactics ever will. Let's get into it. Thank you so much, Tom, for joining me
Thank
today.
you for having me, Jade. I really appreciate being here.
Absolutely. So let's just dive in and really talk about why Brandjectory exists. What did you consistently see CPG founders struggling with that made you realize education alone wasn't enough?
So, the problem that Susan and I saw when we developed Brandjectory was that, brand founders, they get into CPG and they don't have the context. They don't know who's giving them the straight story. They're always responding. The biggest thing I hear is, oh, well, this investor told me this, so I changed my pitch deck. This investor told me that, so I changed my pitch deck again. And then they finally say, I'm never changing my pitch deck again because, everybody wants to change it. They need to know that there's good sources with good information giving them the kind of direction that's going to lead to growth. Okay, that's not just going to give them another way of approaching something, but actually gets them toward growth. We wanted to give them, I guess you could say, a sustainable, ongoing community where they would always meet and connect and learn from people who are really inside the industry. A lot of founders say, hey, I got a great advisor, but that advisor may never have been in CPG. Or as we had a discussion today, somebody said, well, I got a chance to bring an advisor on from PepsiCo. Well, that's great, but has the person ever built a brand that's at 25,000, that right now is at 25,000 in sales? You need to associate with people who can give you the right kinds of information for the right size of company you are, that lead to prosperous growth, that lead to investment, that lead to that real sustainable, everybody uses the term flywheel, but where you're funding yourself and you're growing and you know where to put your investment in such a way to drive the next level of growth.
I love that. And that actually ties into my next question. Why do you think there's such a large jump from having a great product to actually being a fundable business? Why is that hard, especially in CPG compared to other industries?
So, I'm gonna start very very blaming founders a little bit. Founders have this perception, and they really do. I figured out a great product. I really found something wonderful. And maybe they did find, maybe they took something that was in their ethnic tradition, or they found something when they were traveling, or they grew up in a family that, experimented in certain ways with foods, and they find this and they say, this is a great product. Investors are going to come to me, consumers are going to come to me. And they're right when they're at the farmer's market and when they're, trying to raise money from friends and family, people who know them. They're absolutely right. People are saying, this is a great product. I like it. I think it's good. I think it means something. It takes the founders a while to understand that the growth cycle involves both getting on the shelf, getting off the shelf, and understanding why the consumer is picking you. Why are they picking you? It only takes one walk. We're here in Phoenix, and I'm sure people from all over the country are listening to this for with all your contacts. But you walk down the aisle of Sprouts, and you walk down the bar aisle, and you're asleep halfway through it, right? Because it's just a mix of colors, of all the same kinds of things. What's really different? What's really functional? All those kinds of things. Consumers pick a product because it has some meaning to them. Its value, its functionality, its taste. It fits their lifestyle, and not lifestyle in terms of, oh, I'm a runner, or I'm this, or I'm that. This is convenient for me to use when I need it. It's there. It's ready for me. It's something I know how to use. It's something that does something for me. And once the brand founder makes that connection with the consumer and understands who that consumer is and why they're connecting with them, they start to have a business. because then they can say, where is that consumer at? Where are they shopping? Where are they picking up product? When are they picking up product? They can start to figure out what that growth pattern is. Going from product to growth pattern leads to investment, because investors want to know consumers understand the product, that the founder understands where the consumer is, and that it's repeatable business. It's starting to drive that repeatable business where the investor can say, okay, you're in SoCal and you're doing well in Whole Foods, and you can get into NorCal Whole Foods, and you can pick up rallies, and I understand what that growth model is. And that's when founders start to think about, I actually have a business. And investors invest in businesses. They don't invest in products. They want a product in the white space, or at least in the gray space, but they also want to know that they are investing in a business.
So you spoke about investors wanting to make sure that founders understand the consumers and that the consumers are actually being well served. What are some other things that investors are actually looking for when they hear a CPG pitch?
Well, it depends on the size of the brand. Okay, the size of that company. Okay, if you're looking for friends and family and real young angel money or emerging angel money, they're going to want to see things like the product design. Is the product real? Is it on the is it on the shelf? Does it have a physical presence? Okay, do consumers recognize what it is? That kind of thing. When you get to that level of being like $1 million, okay, investors want to start understanding that you're hiring the right kinds of people, and hiring means contracting. You shouldn't be hiring until you're. Some investors will say that the test period is until you're at 5 million in sales. Okay, but you shouldn't be hiring at that point. You should be saying, okay, I need someone to run sales for me. I need someone to run marketing. I need somebody, doing e-commerce. I need somebody doing marketing online for me. They want a founder to start to recognize that they have weaknesses, or they lack the skill, or they lack the time to really be able to expand their business in a way in which they're bringing in people or doing things that are going to make a difference for the business. That's what they want to start seeing at 1 million. When they're in 3 million, when you're in 3 million in sales, those investors want to start seeing that you're structuring a company, that you got good governance, that you're putting together your financials on a regular basis, that you've got the right kinds of contracts in place with your co-man, that you're monitoring your quality assurance with those co-mans properly. They want to know that if they're going to invest in this business, and that business is going to reach 6 or 7 or 8 million in sales and get a Series A, they want to start knowing that that company is set up for that growth. Okay, when a brand is at 5 million in sales, investors are thinking, what's sustainable here? Do you have the right people? Or you now have to hire people? Are you looking, are they looking at it in terms of, have you covered all your markets? What markets are you missing? That's when investors at that stage really want to see, this is a company. This is something that can be built upon. It doesn't need much tweaking. Okay, it needs money to keep that engine going, and that money and that founder is going to drive that process. In all cases, the investor is betting on the founder. They want to know that founder knows how to drive through the problems, drive through the errors. That doesn't mean that doesn't make a difference whether you're at 100,000 in sales, or you're at 7 million in sales, or 8 million in sales. They want to know that founder is able to drive through the issues and the problems. So that's what kind of happens as a company grows. It goes from being product oriented from the founder's perspective and from an investor's perspective to, is this a well-run company? And I think the stage in between is it a company? Is it acting and looking like a company? Then it becomes, hey, is it a well-run enough company that if we put the money into it, it's going to go from 7 million to 25 million. It's going to take in another whatever, and it's going to go to 75 million, and it's going to be Bakkens. That's what's next.
Absolutely. Makes sense. And so at Brandjectory, you guys are combining education and pitching and coaching and networking. Why does that full system matter? Why is that so important?
So, a lot of brands, I started by saying, a lot of brands think, oh, I got a great advisor. They're going to put me here. They're going to put me there. They're going to do this. Okay. But It's really about developing founders. It's really about developing those founders into folks that, that really understand their business and understand what the industry as a whole is looking at. Okay, so yeah, we have the education piece. This is what it means in CPG to have good, a good burn rate, and and positive cash flow, and here's when you need to reach EBITDA, and this is what customer loyalty looks like, and all those things. But we also combine it with practical hands-on experience in one-on-one and group problem solving sessions with industry experts and investors. So like just this morning we brought in a fundraising expert in one of our sessions. There were 5 or 6 brands there. They all had questions of this fundraising expert about their problem, what they're trying to do, how they're trying to. Great discussion back and forth, everybody engaged, and it's a real learning experience both with your fellow founders and with industry experts. So we bring in successful founders. We bring in experts to talk on operations and to answer those kinds of questions. All brands have issues with trade spend, so every once in a while we bring in a trade spend expert. That develops that well-rounded founder who understands the business completely. You just if you just learn how to build a spreadsheet, or learn how to build a pro forma, or learn how to build take a model and build a pitch deck, you're not getting any feedback in that process. It's kind of a closed loop. To pitch in front of an investor this month, next month, the month after, that's what we try to do. My and Susan's pleasure is, like, we hold practice pitch sessions. Earlier this month we brought in an investor, heard 6 pitches. He wanted to follow up with 3 of them afterwards. 50% hit rate to me is great. But the point is, it's that kind of experience, getting feedback from people who matter, who make a difference every day with brands, in their businesses. That's who we try to bring in and connect them directly with founders.
I love that. And you spoke a little bit about investors really looking at the founder as a leader, as a business owner, right? Can they power through? And that means credibility is everything, right? How do founders earn that trust? Maybe if they're not necessarily getting in those rooms at Brandjectory, how can founders build that up?
It comes from becoming. It's a big issue, actually. You go from being founder to CEO. Okay, more than one company has started this way. I founded my company. I took on a partner. Okay, the partner was good at e-commerce. Okay, well, we ended up being more in retail. We got to figure out how to get rid of the partner. Okay, I found this person who said they could do this. I brought them in for a while. I eventually had to fire them. They bring in board members, advisory board members. CEO, a founder is going to listen to those folks. A CEO is going to make decisions. A CEO is going to recognize that, hey, maybe this advisory board person was right at this size, but they're not right at the size we're going to. I've got to change people out. They want to see founders need to build their credibility as a CEO. Okay. And that means whether they're just got 3 or 4 contract people and they're doing all the work themselves, founders, a founder says, oh my God, what am I going to do? I figured out I was losing money at Kroger, and I had to cut what's that going to mean to investors? Play it up to investors. Hey, I realized Kroger was not making us money, so I took a step back from Kroger. Okay. They're going to respect that decision. They're going to see you're making decisions that are best for the business. Okay. That you've lost, or at least moved beyond that faith in the product, that profit for the product, profit for the product, that you're no longer just prophesizing the product. You're building that business that can drive that product to more people. That's the growth that they want to see. Okay. And they know that, especially if you're, when I was 20 years old, I was excited as heck about everything. Right. But, and that's fine. They want to see that, but they also want to see, that you mature as a founder, to become that CEO, make the good decisions, make the right decisions, make tough decisions, but actually move the company forward with the decisions you make.
Absolutely. And so, myself, as a founder of a personal branding agency for founders, how have you seen that visibility and that online presence really directing and being kind of a growth lever in terms of the fundraising journey and actually being able to share their vision out loud?
I think number one, and most importantly, it's connecting with the consumer. Where is your consumer? Okay. Um, you know, the whole online presence, it can be costly or it can drive business very well. Okay. If it's authentic, if the brand is doing it in such a way that it's coming from them, it tells their story, it tends to lead consumers to the position of buying the product, getting the product. That drives home with an investor. Okay. When it's not authentic and it's just plastered on the screen, it doesn't gain any traction. It doesn't help move the needle any. What I think brands have to do consistently is really make sure their brand message is solid, always directed in the same way. Yes, maybe changing it for audiences here and there, but making sure you're consistently driving through what that message is with the qualities and the story behind the product that leads consumers to you. And whether you do it through a photo or words or a demonstration of, here's people using my product in this grocery store where I was sampling it. You need to be able to make sure people are always connecting those same ideas with your product. And that's what I think investors want to see, that there's a consistency and a way in which you're communicating to people, whatever platform, whether it's LinkedIn or TikTok. They want to know that you're communicating with people the right way about your business, and that's what they really look for. On LinkedIn, yes, of course, it can be a little bit more professional to your crowd of people. You want to get some great results of your business out there to other to the investor groups, and connect with the kinds of people that are going to help drive your business. But when it comes to those consumer oriented, front facing platforms, you want to drive that message home, and you want to be just consistent in the presentation of the product, the logo, the way you're approaching them. You want them to know, and sometimes it can be the music or whatever, but you want them to know it's your brand. You want them to know always it's your brand when that piece of material gets in front of them. You don't want them having question what they're reading, what they're looking at. I mean, I can sit here all day with the business news on, and there's a million songs on every commercial, and I have no idea what they're actually advertising. you but I get to hear all the music from when I was 17 years old. So
Yeah, exactly. That's all part of the brand.
right.
I mean, and so I love obviously talking about the investment piece of it. So, how should founders think about building relationships with investors before they even ask for capital?
Well, I'll say use Brandjectory self-servingly, but it is about talking to investors when you're not asking for money. Okay, it's pure and simple. Asking an investor for advice, asking them for just that chance to sit down and chat. I want some feedback on my product. I want some feedback on my pitch. Okay, I'm questioning my valuation. What's your thoughts? These are the ways in which you connect, and to do it in situations where you're not asking for a lot of their time. You're not putting them out. You're not making it contingent upon a true, honest pitch. You're just trying to get that conversation going. That's great. Okay. And that works whether you're at the stage of looking for a PE or a VC that, is going to be that final investment in you, or you're talking to angels. You just want to make sure, that you're creating that relationship with them, because again, it's the trust in the founder that's that especially in early stage, that those investors are looking for. If they know somebody is willing to ask questions, willing to take input, willing to engage in conversations, it's going to make it a whole lot easier when the time comes to raise money. And that's the way in which you have to build. We talked about building that investor confidence as you grow to a CEO. When you're a founder, it's about being inquisitive. It's about being listening. It's about hearing what people tell you as an investor, what investors tell you. What are you internalizing? What are you taking away from it? Nothing pleases an investor more to say, hey, you told me that I needed to go after this market, and I did, and look at my results. Well, guess what that's going to lead to? Guess what the next conversation is going to be? Those are and again, and I'm being self-serving. That's why we have Brandjectory, because you meet a founder, in a session somewhere, they give you an idea. 6 months later, you see them again. You know you're going to see them again. It's not like you're calling up again on a cold call and you give them that feed. That's what investors want to see. They want to see that growth from you, a founder, in taking advice, the right advice, making good decisions, moving your brand forward.
Love that. And that actually ties into my final question is how can these founders reach out to you, Brandjectory, to get started with building their education and their confidence in this network?
So you can reach out to me, Tom Malengo, on LinkedIn, tom@brandjectory.com. Pretty straightforward. Our website is www.brandjectorynow.com. Okay. And look at our, if a founder just takes a look at our LinkedIn, my LinkedIn profile, or my wife, Susan Bryanton, who's my partner in this, look at our LinkedIn profiles, you will see the kinds of events we hold, the kinds of people we bring in, the kinds of subjects we talk about, the events we hold. You'll see it all. And, we try to do different things. We're bringing in someone later this month to talk about how a small brand can leverage their ability to negotiate. Okay, what leverage do they really have? Because most founders think, oh my God, I can get on the shelves of Whole Foods, but they're going to charge me this huge amount of money to get. What leverage do you actually have? We're going to have somebody come in and talk. Those are the kinds of things that founders just normally don't get to be engaged in. That's what we try to do. So just reach out at tom@brandjectory.com. Piece of cake to get a hold of me. DM me on LinkedIn, because we're always there looking out.
Amazing. Tom, thank you so much. And for all you founders out there, make sure you reach out to Tom and Susan. They're doing incredible things over at Brandjectory. Thank you all for listening. Tom, thank you for coming in
Thank
today.
you so much.
And this is the Visible Founder Podcast, and we'll catch you on the next one. Bye, guys.